Hello, and welcome back to another week of Pop Culture Therapy. I'm Advent Nebula.
And I'm Cruellica Kain.
So, we mentioned it at the end of the last episode, which, yes, we know is a long one, but a very important one at that this time we'd be focusing on music and what quarantine has done for several musicians during this, because a lot of them can't go on the planned tours that they've had this year because of the pandemic. And then on top of it, you've had a lot of creativity come out with this. And what sparked this was the fact that 21 Pilots' level of concern has been consistently among one of the top songs in America and in Europe on the charts right now because of it focusing on the very topic of being in quarantine during this pandemic and boredom, which a lot of us have been having.
And I think the one thing that's so amazing right now about music is, as we talked about this prior to the podcast, is there are no movies. Books are kind of hit or miss right now too, just because release schedules are so challenging unless you want to read it online. Television,
it's been put on a back burner outside of animation.
Exactly, unless you rewatch things or if they're streaming. But music is one of those mediums that, if you go down to the roots of it, you don't need big concerts to host your music. You don't need to have all this glitz and glam. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, music is, in my opinion, one of the most creative art forms because it can speak to a wide audience.
And when a lot of artists just have a studio in their home for themselves or in their penthouse or wherever they live, they usually have just a small section of their home that's a set-up home studio. So not all the members, because of the way technology has evolved, need to be even together in the same state to be able to record their stuff now.
Oh, no, because there's a lot of tools that you can use, which has been used for a long time, but I think it's become so much more sophisticated, where you can have mixers or you can have sound machines that help clean up audio, especially if you have to use tools like Audacity or going even with Zoom, Skype, Microsoft. For Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts, if you have to utilize those types of tools to be able to connect with others. And even Lady Gaga proved this with the iPhone. Not that I want to promote Apple, but she did this with one of her more recent singles that came out prior to the pandemic all going crazy, was Stupid Love, which it was recorded all on an iPhone. So there is a lot of opportunity right now for musicians and other creatives to be able to utilize technology to still do music. And I imagine just from like 21 Pilots, Taylor Swift, Grimes, Justin Bieber, to name a few, or even if you go on to even Beyonce with releasing her Disney Plus film, Black is Love, I can only imagine how much isolation has helped fuel the fans of creativity.
Though with Grimes, I'm wondering how much was Elon involved with some of that music, because that latest album, this sounds like Elon Musk may have written part of this album.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. But that's the most fascinating thing. Even if you don't like the musicians, admittedly, I'm not a fan of Grimes or a lot of overly heavy pop, but you still have to you have to appreciate, even Tekashi 69.
Yep.
I am not a fan of his by any means, but he's even released new music and videos.
Yep. And then I have one of the YouTube comments, Bring Me to the Horizon ended up releasing Parasite Eve, which not only is about the old PlayStation game, the song's also a reference to the current pandemic we're in. And for top YouTube comment, 21 Pilots, we're all going to be okay through this. Bring Me to the Horizon, we're all fucked.
And then you have a lot of musicians, which I love, that are doing they're not live, but they're almost like mini concerts right now.
Goldfinger, great example of this with their
yeah.
YouTube page. They've been releasing their old 90s hits of the when ska and punk was a big combination together. A lot of you younger listeners will not remember when ska and punk decided to merge into its own genre back in the 90s.
Yeah, us old people lived the era of ska and punk becoming fused, which still makes no sense to me even to this day.
But they released 9 videos right now of them re-recording their hits from that era. And they're all around in their own home studios doing this. And they filmed it together and then pieced it together. And it's actually pretty entertaining to actually see what the band looks like today, because they've been on tour, but not so frequently. And it's like they saw this as an opportunity to kind of come back together. Weezer ended up recording an album in 4 weeks that's coming out soon. An album in 4 weeks that because of what's been going on.
Well, and I've seen online that Bob Dylan's doing some stuff, that 9 Inch Nails is doing some stuff, and then obviously Taylor Swift is releasing her newest album. Kanye, outside of the presidential election, is releasing some music. So you have a lot of musicians. As much as Kanye frustrates me personally, he actually is a genius when it comes to his music. So I can't argue there. But
Metallica, with their upcoming Blu-ray release of last year's S&M concert, decided to release 2 new songs that they recorded while this was going on, and to say also, hey, we're going to have these released on the CD version of S&M as bonus tracks for S&M 2, but as well, we're back in the studio working on another album, which I gotta say, since Death Magnetic, Metallica's been back on the right track.
Absolutely, and one of my he's not like a overly like Metallica level musician, but Todrick Hall, who I love, he was in Kinky Boots, if you like Broadway plays and things like that, but he released for the drag or LGBTQ community an album called Quarantine Queen. And he has a song which I love that's called Mask Love Soap Scrubs. I'll have to show it to you sometime because it's hilarious. But music is a fantastic equalizer. And I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts, mainly because as a band geek for me and as avid music lovers, the both of us, our parents done raised us right there because we grew up with music. That was...
Yeah. And one thing this pandemic's really kind of humbled one musician, which everybody in the metal community knows his ego, but Yngwie Malmsteen has actually kind of toned down his ego and started working with other musicians in Europe right now. I'm like, wow, the most egotistical man in metal is actually kind of mellowed out during this. I'm impressed.
And then K-pop is having such a huge boom because the 2 biggest acts we have in K-pop right now, which are Blackpink as well as BTS, both of them are doing like different videos talking about how they're coping with the pandemic, or releasing videos or releasing music. And so you have those 2 acts doing it, plus other bands doing it, that it's such an exciting time for music lovers, and it's an exciting time to look at different music, because you get a lot of the classic bands like Weezer, or you get a lot of the current top 40 musicians doing stuff such as Taylor Swift. So you get to take advantage of such a wide host of music and have fun with it. And
I mean, going down a Pandora rabbit hole of just what's coming out that's been recent, especially when you're going into your preferred genres of music, especially with somebody like me that enjoys some of stuff like Synthwave.
Oh, God.
Which is like, that's even having more resurgence right now from what it had a few years ago just because of everything going on.
Oh, absolutely. I see right now, because of the fact that nobody can go to concerts unless they're digital, which unfortunately they're hit or miss because you're taking a risk if you do an online concert that everyone's technology is going to work continuously straight through.
Yeah.
So that's the one challenge if you do those paid concerts. But I do see right now with the music industry, and I'll be curious to see how it continues throughout the rest of the year, how experimental with this year music may be.
Well, and I was, Tobias Forge was talking about how he's kind of really changed focus on where the next Ghost album is going to go because of everything that's happened, where he had a set plan for the next, but he's like, I've changed some of my ideas for it because this pandemic's kind of really reshaped my thinking on it. I'm like, okay, now I'm really curious to see where you're going to be going.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping for with a lot of musicians, is that unlike past years, we haven't had what's called the Song of the Summer. Because...
Well, actually, we kind of do. 21 Pilots' Level of Concern has become the Song of Summer. By de facto, it's really the only one that makes sense with what's going on.
Absolutely. But Song of the Summer, and we're not pop fans. We like some pop because we respectively like all sorts of music, so we're not limiting there. But we're not like the Billboard 100 pop fans.
Which is kind of weird because every year you've had that one song that's been that Song of the Summer that comes out of nowhere. And this year, it's from a very mainstream rock band.
Yes, and they're an experimental rock rap band. They are taking a new take on because 21 Pilots,
and they went extremely high poppy with this song, which threw me for a loop.
Well, some of their songs,
like Heathens.
Heathens is one of my favorite songs, but You want to see a lot of change. And in the last about 10 years, the reason I highlight the Song of the Summer is because a lot of big musicians, especially the ones that are going mainstream, they prefer to be able to have that big hit that everybody's going to talk about. And usually the Song of the Summer is something that hits like early summer and stays almost in the zeitgeist throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, because you had Despacito, and then last year, I can't remember the song, but I do remember it was a K-pop song last year, and then this year it goes back to a genre that we thought was on its death kneels with just your basic rock and roll.
Yeah, rock has definitely
benefited in a way from this. I hate to say it.
It really has, and I'm hoping it benefits a little bit more because a lot more of the musicians out there in genres that are not typically known for their instrumentals. I don't want to pick on them, but traditional pop as well as traditional rap
have really suffered during this for
They've
creativity.
Suffered, but you'll see more creativity from these musicians now because you get to see their capabilities of playing instruments.
And then for you and I, a genre neither of us care about, but because we just got to bring it up, country music's really starting to kick on a thrive during this going on.
It has, and I think that's because for country, being that my parents are big country and classic rock fans, I'm used to it, even if I don't enjoy it myself, is the reason why it's taking off so much is because country has always had that element of unity, even though it's usually been always the good old boys type of thing.
And there's really, as I like to describe country, it has two moods, super depressed or super patriotic.
And I think right now it's that's working in its favor because music hasn't been going like overly depressed, like, yeah, we're screwed and things like that, but it's still having some fun with it. Whereas I would say if this happened 10 years ago, actually, let's look at 9/11. 9/11 was a tragedy.
Yeah, you just got to go back 20 years ago.
If you go basically 20 years ago with 9/11, the music that came out not long after that was very tragic but very patriotic. Even from rock, actually all genres had that element of we're in this together, kind of holding each other, but it was so tragic in its tone. Where here for this pandemic, I have to say surprisingly, with how tragic everything else has been, the music for the most part has still kept people engaged.
Yeah, it's really just been your metal bands keeping with the topic of going for the doom and gloom side, but it fits with their genre.
But, yeah,
everybody
that's
else
normal.
is going, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this.
Exactly, which I have to say, for 2020, that is the one thing that I'm very happy that we did get. We have a lot of negatives, we have a lot of terrible stuff going on, but 2020, the one thing it will be known for, I hope, is changing the landscape of music and allowing musicians to be musicians again.
Yeah, you're seeing the record companies really have backed off, and it's now been, I think also part of that's the streaming services, but still, you're seeing creativity really flow out of this. Yeah, I haven't seen, I want to say, about the mid-90s for music.
Absolutely. I feel like the last few years, and there's been good music the last few years, even when you go to the Billboard charts, there's been good music that I think everyone likes, because everyone loved Old Town Road. That was the one from last year. I had to think about it. But everyone can honestly say the last few years, the music has been very stifling. You've had hits that have come out of nowhere, but it's not like you felt that connection to music that you have. That's why I feel like a lot of movies have ended up using, and I think we talked about this in an earlier podcast, that
we actually did. We did do a
classic
whole
music.
podcast to that.
Yes, we actually did. We talked a whole podcast about how movies have been using a lot of classic music from the 60s and 70s and 80s now. And I kind of feel like this is the year, hopefully, that musicians, because they have a little bit more time to play around with their craft.
And they don't have the record companies breathing down their neck like they normally do.
Well, no, because yes, you can work on an album, but in quarantine, no matter how good your technology is, and yes, if you need to work an album, you can make it work, but you can make an album, but it's the concert sales that really build up the momentum for
and
an
then it's the
album.
merchandise sales as well, which right now it's basically they're recording music and putting it on the streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And the merchandise sales, because they don't have the concert revenue right now, but you're seeing a benefit of the creativity, like I keep going back to on that right now, because they're more concerned about their creativity than they are what they can get from concert revenue right now.
Absolutely. And so I'm hoping that if nothing else comes of 2020, the music's going to be kick-ass, superb, and it's going to start a new trend for how we look at the next evolution of music. Because being older, and I never thought I would say this because I've heard it from others, my parents. I never thought I would myself see so many evolutions because I didn't get a chance to live through the 60s and 70s, so I only heard it. But living through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now, I have really seen, as you have, the evolution of music. You had, in the 80s, that was the era of the most experimentation of my particular generation, because you had pop, punk, rock, grunge, evolution of death metal.
Basically from 85, because both of us are in that same age group, from 85 to 97 was probably the most experimental time for
Absolutely.
the music.
How many genres came to life in that time? Yes, many of them existed prior to it, but they really flourished in then. And then when we got to the late 90s until 2003, you still had some experimentation, but it was very on trend.
Yeah, and then it wasn't until, I want to say, about 2013 to now is where you've had the real evolution in the different types of rap that have now come out.
You've had a lot of rap. I think EDM has now come out of the fringes into more popular type music.
People that were not born in the time frame when the 80s and early 90s were at their peak, Synthwave from a lot of these artists that ended up really liking that music branched off from EDM, so you've had that genre come out.
Which Synthwave has been surprising me because it's not as repetitious as EDM. And it has some lyrical elements, even if it doesn't have lyrics.
Yeah, which it's of a genre that's only been around for in the mainstream for about 7 to 8 years, even though it really started to pop up, I want to say about 2008. It's only the last few years where it's taken off because of EDM and its association of branching off from EDM.
Absolutely. And rap, I will say, having been around since the beginning of, like,
The gangster hip-hop.
Hip-hop rap with Public Enemy, Run DMC, LL Cool J, all in the 80s.
Ice Cube.
Ice-T. Having lived all of that and have experienced it, while I was not a huge rap fan when it came out, I enjoyed it, please. I enjoyed old school rap, but when it became more mainstream, I was not a fan.
Why do you think Ice Cube now has his own band? His own band for rock and roll? I can't think of the name. It's Death Penalty or something. He's doing rock albums now because the type of rap he wants to do is not profitable.
And there's so much out there, and it felt like in the 90s rap was so poppy. You had the gangster rap, but that really wasn't as mainstream. Like, it was still on the fringes of it. And it's not until the mid 2000s where rap really, it always had a foothold, but
it overtook rock and roll around 2008.
It really did. And while it was disappointing as a hardcore rock fan, at the same time,
you gotta give it, because rap is a genre that spun off from rock and roll. You have to accept that.
Well, it spun off from rock, it spun off from jazz, it spun off
from R&B.
R&B, which R&B, that's where you get it. So, but music, you gotta love music, you gotta live music. Even if you're not a huge fan of it, which not everyone has to be, it is, as I said earlier, a great equalizer, and it's a wonderful tool that can be used for mental health, for emotion, for physical fitness, for meditation, relaxation.
Yeah, we talked about this in the previous episode. With health, music, that's why we spun this into the next topic. Music in quarantine is great for health as well as everything else.
Because you could, and if you're a huge anime fan, oh my god, there's so much. And anime music does not have a genre.
No.
It's rock, it's rap, it's pop, it's classical.
Basically, a lot of the music you hear in anime shows, or even a lot of Japanese live actions, it's to promote an artist that's on the same production company that is producing the show. Is also has some association with that music, so they're trying to cross-promote each other.
And so there's that too. There's so much music out there. Even if you're not a fan of regular music and you prefer rap or rock or anime music or just K-pop or J-pop or J-rock or even, for me, I also love Spanish rock or Spanish pop music. Even if you don't understand it, Bollywood music. There's so much out there. Find your genre, find your interests.
Yeah, you're talking to me. You're talking to me, who listens to a ton of European bands. I enjoy Brazilian and Colombian metal.
I have not listened to either. I've listened to Spanish metal, Mexican metal, which is insane. And then,
yeah, when you have a mariachi band in your metal band. I'm not joking there either.
I know, that's so awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of different types of music there. So we wanted to just highlight, at least for 2020, it's a great time for musicians to be creative. But at the same time, if you enjoy what you enjoy and it's not any new musicians, that is cool as well. Just enjoy it and stay sane.
Yep. And with that, we're going to sign out. Our next episode will be back to a character focus.
A therapy chair session.
And then from there, if we don't have a break, we'll go on to another topic. That one will more than likely just be a filler episode before we get to the heart of things. Because our favorite month is coming up.
I know, I'm so excited. If you don't know what our favorite month of the year, I live it every month of the year.
I was born in said month.
I know, I'm so jealous. I'm so mad that I was not born on Halloween. I've yelled at my mom for years of why she could not have me at Halloween. And
Think about it this way. I was born early. I was supposed to be a Scorpio.
I was supposed to be born 2 weeks. I was late because unfortunately I'm late to everything, even my own birth. But I was so mad that my mom didn't find a way through everything. And I know you can't exactly control all of that because I do know biology. But I wanted to be born on Halloween. But the coolest thing for my birthday is it is Vampires Day. But nevertheless, our favorite month of the year is October. I like horror movies 12 months of the year, so I'm not limited to that. But yes, our topics for the month are going to be all horror related.
So we have 2 episodes coming up before we get ready to start recording for October. Yes, because of everything that's going on, we're only going to have 2 more episodes before we focus on October.
Yes, only because we want to have as much fun for October as possible. And maybe if we get lucky, we can start our Halloween month a little bit earlier and extend it a little bit later because we're psychos like that. But yes, we do want to focus on Halloween month. Our character session is going to be on the Sailor Moon universe because now that Kaiji Okami has finished Sailor Moon's franchise, we can take advantage and have fun putting all of those characters in therapy chairs.
Yes. And then, like we said, we'll have a little filler episode. Kind of pretty much will be our wrap-up of summer, more than likely, is what it'll end up being.
Absolutely, because there's been a lot of, probably more so on anime than I think anything else, because there really hasn't been much television or movie. So we'll probably just talk about some more of the animes that come out still, that we've been able to catch up on, watch, or maybe we'll ask the man of culture some of the series that he has taken an opportunity to watch over the summer, even if it's not new. Because I do have to admit, I'm curious about the men of culture.
Yes. And
if you don't know what I'm talking about, rewatch our last podcast.
Or just Google Men of Culture anime and you'll come up with the 4 horsemen of the Men of Culture anime meme pretty damn quick. But with that, the last thing we want to touch on is we're just going to give one little teaser. One little teaser to one of the character chairs we're going to be doing for October. And we've been wanting to do this one for a while. Cruellica, it's one of her favorite all-time horror villains, and that's Mr. Freddy Krueger himself.
I know. And maybe during the therapy chair session, I'll talk about the original ideas I had for our videos, because we were planning originally to do videos before podcasts. So I might highlight that and maybe even take a chance with him and do an on-video pop culture therapy. But with that said, bye!